What is going on, guys? Welcome back. Commentary for you, Jimmy Smith, Ryan Moody, our MMA show. I don't know that I've ever so much looked forward to hearing you talk to me about fights, or I guess with me would be more accurate. But
yeah, I don't
we're
talk
here to
at
recap
you.
everything.
Your opinion means a lot to me.
Oh, Jimmy, thank you.
Oh,
Everyone in the comment
see?
section just cringed. We had a moment.
Dude, this is game. Go ahead.
You know who else had a moment? Grant Dawson, Derek Minner. This was, let me just say, I was involved with a fight between Anthony Smith and Elvis Matochik that played out very similar. Two guys that knew each other on the regional scene that wanted to fight and finally got to meet in the UFC. And this fight had a lot of those same emotions going through it for me. I was really impressed with Derek Minner and his game plan. Okay, this was a short notice fight for him. He comes in against a guy that has all the world of hype behind him. And he stuck to the game plan. And he looked really, really good. Now, granted, Grant pulled through in the end, but he put Grant in some really difficult positions. I think we saw Grant get tested a lot in terms of his toughness. And I know these are situations, and we're going to talk about this on the next fight too. These are generally situations where the UFC calls somebody up, they let him come in for one fight, and then they show him the door. I would hope that Derek Minner showed enough in this loss that they would keep him around for just one more fight, give him a full camp, because honestly, I think I saw somebody that was UFC caliber in the ring tonight.
Yeah, he certainly put up a good fight. We saw some technical skills. We saw some technical deficiencies. And I'm going to say this. My jiu-jitsu game, I've been in jiu-jitsu like 20 years. I am a black belt. You know what I'm not good at? A couple things. Number one, I think, especially because I prefer no-gi myself, my guillotines aren't that good. Part of the problem is I have big forearms. It's hard for me to fit my forearms under somebody's jaw. So I generally, I don't go for a lot of guillotines. And when I do, I don't waste a whole lot of time on them. Either I get them quickly or I don't. That might be a blessing when I look at fights like this, where that was Minner's kind of go-to was the guillotine. And he spent a ton of energy trying to get it, couldn't get it, got mounted, got his back taken, and got finished. And it's one of those things where I was watching this fight going, man, I guess I'm happy. I don't have great guillotines, so I don't spend a lot of energy on them because I thought that was kind of his downfall. That was his undoing. I think you are correct about the skill set he showed, the game plan he showed, all around pretty good. Seemed pretty out of gas at the end. And they were only, a minute and a half into round two. Didn't seem to have a whole lot left. I thought he was a bit inefficient. If he changes that up, I think he is certainly worthy of staying on the UFC roster.
So you saying Popeye the Sailor Man no good with guillotines?
Yeah, man. I have Popeye arms, and it's just no good with guillotines. It's very hard. Guys with long, skinny arms tend to be better at them, and I'm just not.
Jimmy, I'm too buff to grapple with you and get you in a guillotine, Smith. I like it.
It's true. It just won't fit, man. A guy's a lot stronger than me that has skinny forearms, and they're able to get it. I cannot. And it's always the skinny dudes. You're like, God damn, they get around your neck, and you're like, this is going to suck. Really suck. Yeah, I hate it. But I thought that was a factor in the fight. That's why. I thought that was a factor in this fight.
Get a move forward. Megan Anderson, Norma Dumont. I think we mentioned in the pre-show you don't see a lot of finishes. This actually was not going Megan's way. She actually surprised me up against the cage. She did try to get, her hooks in, but was really getting pushed around. And I was really taken back by this. I really thought Norma Dumont was impressive in all aspects of her game. She just kind of slipped up and got caught. And there's a couple girls you don't want to get hit clean with, and Megan Anderson being one of them. But I do just want to run one thing back with you, Jimmy. I was listening to our podcast before, and you said that you picked Megan, of course, because you're going to discuss Invicta with her in the upcoming weeks. Wasn't that just as insulting for you to say? Because that's almost like you saying, I wasn't going to pick her, but because I have this engagement with her, now I have to pick her.
Look, I know it's retroactive now when she actually won. I really did believe she had the talent to win this fight, the physical ability. And I would have picked her anyway, to be honest, all joking aside. But the thing is, did you ever see the ringside DVD collection of Mike Tyson's fights?
Yes.
But yeah, kind of the retrospective DVD. A lot of fight fans had it. I had it. And I think it was on that DVD. They asked Teddy Atlas what they first saw him and Customato when they saw Mike Tyson. And he goes, we saw a kid who was 12 years old, 190 pounds with no fat. With Megan Anderson, it's a similar kind of thing, right? What's the first thing you know about Megan Anderson? Man, she's big for this weight class. She's shredded. She's very tall. Seems like an athlete. Fits the bill, right? You notice and remark on the physical talent. I thought the same thing you did. She was getting pushed around, tactically a bit behind, wasn't going her way, but God, when she lands a shot, she can put out anybody. And that's been, I think, the positive and the negative of Megan Anderson's career. As you look at her and go, man, why isn't she champ, in a sense, physically? Her inability to put it together has been the problem. We saw both sides of that tonight.
Yeah, and that's so fitting that you mentioned that, because afterwards the call out to Amanda Nunes, which, yeah, okay. Earmuffs, Megan. Earmuffs. Jimmy's about to lay.
I don't think you're quite ready, Megan. Let's be totally honest here. I think Nunes is on another level. I mean, of course, the problem of with this division is there aren't many people in it. Fast forward to the Spencer fight, but it's one of those things where she shouldn't get Nunes with her next fight, but she's not far out of the conversation. I would save that call out for a little bit personally.
Let me put it a little different and more polite way, perhaps. If and when this fight happens, she will have a single opportunity, I believe, at a championship, and she must capitalize on that to the fullest extent. The only way that she can win a championship, or any fighter for that matter, is to put together a perfect game plan and execute it as flawlessly as possible. I think she needs a few more fights to learn how to develop that plan. She has all the tools. She has all the physical gifts. She has some of the greatest coaches in the world with Graham MMA, James Krause, Zach Cummings, all those guys over there. She has an arsenal of weapons at her disposal to make her a champion. But don't go into it too quickly, because we've seen what happens when you go in too quickly. You can't get back into the fire once it's already been put out to a degree.
I was thinking about this recently. Hopefully have an announcement to make soon about some gigs coming up. And one of the things I was thinking about were MMA upsets and combat sports upsets, and how infrequently it's a one-shot knockout upset, right? When you think about the greatest upsets in combat sports history, and going all the way back, boxing, of course, you have things like Ali Foreman, the classics, right? Douglas Tyson. Rarely is it a one-shot comeback. Usually it's a better game plan. The opponent comes in, the underdog comes in with something the favorite didn't expect. Volkanovski Holloway. He just came into the game plan that Holloway didn't seem completely ready for. And they stick to it, and they're disciplined, and it's planned out, and they usually win most of the fight. It doesn't come down to the last round. It doesn't come down to one big knockout. It doesn't come down to these dramatic things. It's they followed the game plan and they won, and the favorite wasn't ready for it. And to your point, if you want to beat Amanda Nunes, you got to really outfight her for a long time. I don't see the one shot turning the tide. So whoever upsets her, assuming Father Time doesn't catch up to her, has to keep that in mind. You got to beat her for minutes, rounds, and then fights. That's how you win.
Going to move up the card here to a very odd fight. I literally had flashbacks to Strikeforce with this. So Magomed Ankalaev and Ian Cutelaba, they had bad blood coming in, and I don't really know where it came from, but it was clearly there. They get into the ring. Cutelaba walks over to do his entrance, goes beyond where he should be going, which at most points you have someone from security there to prevent, but no one's there. This also was in a very small arena for that matter, so I don't know if, I don't know the inner workings of the UFC, but it just seemed like when they go to venues this small, from my personal experiences being there as a fan, things are just not as tight-knit as they are when they're at the fucking T-Mobile Center, right? It's just different. When I went to the show in Buffalo, it was like 5,000 people sat there. Totally different experience than going to a large arena. Sometimes on these smaller shows, it just seems like they're not as tight in what they're doing. So he goes across. Clearly, there was something other than just the throat slit done you get immediate underhooks. They kind of grapple for a second, get pulled apart. At that point, I personally think the fight has to be done. Like, you violated the Athletic Commission's rules. This is a no contest. To my surprise, they pull them back apart, fire the card back up, and then I don't know, honest to God, if he was really trying to just put on a front that he was getting knocked out, like he was light on his feet. If he was acting, this is one of the best acting, I'm acting like I'm going to get knocked out I've ever seen in my life. He was very, very loose, very, very unsettled in his feet, in his weight, and his balance, but clearly mentally he was all there. The fight gets stopped on its feet. He then not only immediately protests, but vehemently protests with zero. When you looked at it, there was zero doubt that he was in this. And obviously the people that were there voiced their displeasure very, very loudly.
That's all accurate. Cutelaba took an amazing risk. First off, from my experience on the production side, the rule is, just so everybody knows, you have basically your half of the cage or octagon to do with what you want. So you can walk all the way up to the halfway mark without that being a violation. Once you cross that, you're in the opponent's space. You're not supposed to do that. Now, is there generally more security with big arenas? Yes. 2, if there's like a Khabib Conor, there's going to be security right there. If they rematch, they're going to be right on it to keep something like that from happening. I didn't notice any pre-fight heat between these guys. So I don't think the UFC or the venue were prepared for them to have a problem. A lot of times, and for people who are old enough to remember, Lewis Tyson, where they actually put a phalanx of security in between them in the ring, I don't think they were prepared for this to happen. Once Cutelaba, that's why nobody was there to intervene. They just didn't think it was going to happen. And we've never really seen this before, pre-fight. When he walked over and pushed Ankalaev, that could have been it. They can disqualify you right there. You are not allowed to do that. He's at least going to get a fine post-fight, for sure. They could have literally disqualified him. That was stupid, stupid, stupid. To go through a whole camp, you walk across, push the guy, and they go, you're done. You're disqualified. They could have done that, and they didn't. Now that we're past that, the finish itself, clearly in the replay, and what I saw, a lot of the punch, the kicks and strikes that looked really damaging didn't really get through. He did eat some good ones. Didn't get through. He could have been wobbly on his feet. He could have been just using some exaggerated head movement to get out of the way, kind of wobbling and kind of giving him an unorthodox look to get out of this attack, right? He was in the middle of throwing a big overhand right when the ref stepped in to stop it. So the timing could not have been a whole lot worse. Also, a guy who's really rocked and wobbled, when they protest, they're wobbly. And we've seen that a million times. Remember Diaz Lawler? And Nick drops him with a jab, and Lawler goes face down, gets up, and he's pissed, but he's like staggering around. He's like wobbling around, going, "Hey, it shouldn't have been stopped." That happens all the time in combat sports. Guys are protesting and they can't stand up straight. He clearly had his legs under him, yelling at the referee. He was clearly hopping around the octagon, furious. You can't really do that if you just got rocked. I mean, he'd fall over, Remember with the Askren Lawler stoppage. And one of the things I said when I broke that fight down post-fight is when you fall for a bulldog choke and it's so bad you're out, you don't hop back to your feet with all your balance. You'd fall over. You'd pass out. And Robbie jumped right up to protest and wasn't wobbly or anything. I've never seen anyone go out from a bulldog choke, and I have seen people go out from a bulldog choke, hop up and be okay. I've never seen that. So similar instance here, if you're really that rocked, while he was protesting, we would have seen some signs that he wasn't with it, and we didn't see any of them. To me, this is just a bad stoppage, period. I don't know exactly why he was wobbled. Maybe he probably was rocked at least a little bit, but I also think he may have been exaggerating it, either to bait the guy in so he could throw a big right hand, or to give him kind of an unorthodox look to like move his head a little bit. But he was still in the fight. He was still intelligently defending himself. He was still giving intelligent offense. He was answering back, and he was on his feet. It was just a bad call. I'm not going to throw the referee under the bus. Of course, he did eat some big shots, but I thought it was a bad stoppage, bad decision, and that's the way it goes. They're going to have to fight again, but Kutulaba's got to cool down and not do something that's going to cost him the fight before it happens.
I was amazed he didn't go after Kevin McDonald. I mean, based on the initial, pushing and shoving in the beginning to his, outburst of a protest, which, let me just back up a second. If you set everything else aside, if you look at the stoppage, his side of it versus our side of it is totally different. Because we're, looking at this and saying, well, I could see where Kevin McDonald would look at that and see those exaggerated movements as trying to protect the fighter. Kutalaba is knowing in his head, at least, hey, I was 100%. You don't have to go back far. If you go to the Norma Dumont fight, she's protesting the knockout, and you can tell, like, she's not there. She's looking up at the lights, like, no, I didn't get knocked out. And they're like, no, honey, you did. Take a seat. Stay down. You'll be okay. He didn't even begin to say, hey, I was, wobbly or anything like that. If he would have collapsed when Kevin McDonald walked in, yeah, okay. He actually caught a shot after Kevin McDonald walked in, too, which I thought was a little bit fitting.
Yeah, but also if you look at the stoppage, the timing was weird. He wasn't taking a shot at the time. They had kind of had a, boom, boom, boom. He takes his combination. They break for a second. He's about to throw a right hand, and then the referee stepped in. He didn't step in mid-combination where you're like, oh, this guy's taking a lot of damage. I want to save him a little bit. He wasn't getting hit at the time. So it was also the timing of the stoppage. Even if the guy is wobbly a bit, if the other guy isn't currently hitting him, maybe he wakes up again. Maybe he gets back in it mentally. I thought the timing of the stoppage, too, was suspect in that it wasn't in the middle of a combination. It wasn't in the middle of ground and pound, and these punches are raining down on him. None of that was happening. So I thought it was just timed really poorly.
Yeah, this shit never happens with Mario Yamasaki in the ring. I'm just saying.
Yeah, it's true. Very, very true. It's the other flip side of the coin.
Leave it with somebody's leg. Mario's still letting him go. Moving up, the co-main event. This was a quick one. When you want to talk about there's levels to this, like here was exhibit A, B, and C. I mean, I don't even know what to say about Felicia Spencer. She just every second of the fight she dominated. It honestly, it makes you feel bad to say this, but I don't even think there was much offense even attempted. When she got down to end this fight, you could just tell there was no more fight left. This was a really, really dominating fight. And I hate to say it, like, that's the performance I want to see, and then hear the Amanda Nunes call out, because that gives me hope. Like, oh, okay. Yeah. If you can get in there early, you can maul her, you can get on top of her, you can limit her escape options. You can probably get this done. She's still a human being. She has really risen up the ranks with impressive wins and looks better every time doing it. And, this was just kind of another person in the way of what seems to be her staking her claim to get a championship fight.
I will give Dos Santos a little bit of credit on the feet. She did try to land some punches, landed a couple jabs before Spencer came in, body locked her, took her down, and mauled her. So on the feet, there was some attempt to win the fight. But man, as soon as she got her down, man, it was a short forearm elbow, and she just winced. Do you see that? She closed both eyes and I went, oh, that's a stinger. It's over. You get stung in the forehead or the nose and you can't open your eyes. It looked like that. And as soon as that happened, she curled up a little bit. It was over. Absolutely over. As soon as she got dominant position. I do believe Spencer can hurt just about anybody from a dominant position. It's about the power that Nunes has on the feet to keep Spencer at bay. That's the interesting challenge. But as soon as she got on top, full mount, cracking shots, it was absolutely finished.
The last time you made a mistake and I didn't correct you, the keyboard warriors came out in full force. So I will ask you very humbly, Who is Dos Santos? Because I didn't
Well,
see a
that's her
Dos
full
Santos
name.
in this.
Farron Dos Santos is her full name.
Oh, I didn't recognize that when they had her.
No. I'm sorry. I know on air it said Farron. Her actual full name is Farron Dos Santos. So I just when I was studying for this fight, I have it written down as Dos Santos. So that's why. It's one like last. I want to explain something. Last night, I called Titan, and there was a guy Paulo Silva, and his name on air was Paulo Silva Bello. And when I asked him in the interview, what name do you want me to say on television? He said Paulo Silva. And I've run into this, and I if we're gonna have a teaching moment here, this happens all the time with Brazilian fighters, because a lot of them have, multiple names, multiple middle names and stuff like that, multiple last names. And, we had one, John Teixeira in Bellator. And the whole time we had him was John, and his nickname was Macapa, because I assume that was where he was from. Like, he's from a village named called Macapa or whatever. And I was calling his fight in Italy, and suddenly he was John Macapa. And I went, who's John Macapa? And they go, yeah, John Teixeira. And I say, he just changed his name. They go, yeah, he wants to go by Macapa now. Like, that's his actual name. And so all of our video packages said John Teixeira. And so when they, and then he walks out and they announce it was John Macapa. And I'm like, what the hell? It's crazy, but I've run into that a lot. So this is another example where I know it was Farron Dos Santos. And then tonight when they announced her name, it was just Farron or whatever. And anyway, but it happens all the time when you're announcing. Or commentating. Everybody's got to be on the same page. The ring announcer, you, and then the graphics all have to say the same thing, and a lot of times they don't. There you go.
To my point, this is why I don't correct you, because one, people still know who you're talking about, and two, it does this. But it does bring up a good point.
They might not. They might not, and I had to explain that to keep from confusing people. You never know.
Well, someone didn't get confused, but we added a couple minutes of this. Now, just, to refer back to the story where you were driving in your car and started to hear fighters' names, do you have the simple names like James Vick? James Vick.
Yes. And they laugh a lot of times. They'll laugh. They'll be like, James Vick. Because they're like, really? You're going to screw up James? But, also there's a Spanish commentators and Portuguese commentators and stuff for different countries who don't know how to say James Vick properly. You know what I mean? The way I might not be able to say, Fajeda properly, they might not be able to say James Vick properly. So even the people with really simple names record them. They sent, I don't know how it works now, but they would send a audio file, bunch of MP3s with every fighter's name on it so that you have them all together. Yeah.
Shout out to the undercard guys that had to do that.
Yeah.
TJ Brown, Sean Brady. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Sean
all right.
Brady. And you have to say it like 2 or 3 times. Sean Brady. Sean Brady. And they'll put their nicknames in there too. So it'll be like Sean the Destroyer Brady. It's kind of funny.
To bring it full circle, it would be Popeye the Sailor Man.
Exactly.
You know what we didn't laugh at, Jimmy? The main event. All right.
Fight. First off, great fight. First off, every reason to like the 125-pound division, to me, was on display.
Glad you got the positives out of the way.
I did. I really want to start positive. Thought it was a great fight with really dynamic, explosive action. Both guys really committed. I really thought it was an excellent fight. Now let's get negative.
It was a meaningless fight. Yes. Yeah, I mean, it can be the greatest visual fight we've ever seen, but the fact of the matter is the belt doesn't change hands. I would argue that the headbutt cut Benavidez, which, the fight was going to end anyway, okay? I mean, let's be fair. Benavidez was clearly the smaller man. If it wasn't apparent visually, it was apparent in their exchanges, because Figueiredo would just push him down, push him away, walk through his shots. 2.5 pounds on a scale couple days before a fight is a lot. And for those that don't know, the UFC is well aware of what these guys walk into the hotel at. I'm sure they were all over him trying to get him to make weight. This is everything that we talk about: professionalism, camp, diet, nutrition. These are all things that they have given to them. They all have assistants with these things to ensure that these things don't happen, because they don't want somebody going into an unbalanced title fight, and they don't want to push a title fight that doesn't have a title change hands. All those things happen in this fight. Exciting fight, entertaining fight, brutal fight, yes. But at the end of the day, this fight doesn't mean anything. Except, like I did say, a pretty cool poster. But now the poster doesn't mean anything because the title was in the back of it, Jimmy.
Yeah, it sucks. It sucks. And it's not good at all for the flyweight division. This is a division that was, a lot of people thought, on death's door. It kind of came back. We finally got a title fight. This means that, things are good to go. And now you have a non-champion. You have the guy that won isn't champion because he didn't make weight. Basically, the wrong guy won for the continuation of the flyweight division. Everything's confused now. Everything's muddled. Everything's wrong. Everything's screwed up. Nobody has job security at 125. It sucks. It sucks. And I know a lot of people are going to blame the clash of heads. First off, it's a clash of heads, not a headbutt, meaning Figueiredo didn't throw his head at a stationary Joseph Benavidez. They were fighting and their heads came together. That's different. Could have easily been Figueiredo that got cut. And so, he put his hand, wiped away the blood, and boom, right hand nailed him. That sucks. It's unfortunate, but it was a clash of heads, not a headbutt. It wasn't a missed foul. And can we talk about that armbar in the beginning? Because, holy God, I can't believe Benavidez got out of that. And once he did get out of it, I'm sure his arm was bumping. I'm sure he would soldier on anyway, and you'd never know it. But he had to have tweaked his arm getting out of that armbar because, God, Figueiredo was so tenacious with it. Really great jiu-jitsu, really great tenacity. I loved everything I saw in this fight. But, man, getting out of that took guts. That took a lot of balls. And that right hand that ended this fight was right on the money. Everything you said is correct. Him not making weight makes this great moment for Figueiredo. I don't want to say meaningless, but it's almost worse than meaningless because it just throws everything into confusion. It's not like the fight didn't happen. It did happen. And yet he's not champ and no one knows what's going on with 125. My only hope here is that this fight shows the potential of the weight class. It shows that they can still have really great fights at 125 and that fans can really be interested. And I hope that holds up. I hope that's enough.
Yeah, if I said headbutt, I didn't mean that. So that's a point where
it's sure. I just want to point out that both guys clashed heads and he just happened to get cut by it.
I would argue he didn't reach to touch blood. He reached to turn the spigot off because that thing was going to start leaking. And it clearly distracted him. You're right. It could have easily affected both fighters. But when you look at the whole fight, first of all, to go back to that armbar, you're absolutely right. When he rolled into it, I initially thought that his arm was getting torqued backwards. But I think he was just rolling through it. But it was deep. It was bad. And it took a lot of heart to get out of that. And, I think that just showed me a lot of times, you can really get a read for the exchanges. You could see Benavidez was getting hurt by these punches. And he was just not willing to succumb to the power. It was almost like he knew coming in, like, all right, I'm going to fight from behind here. I got a bigger guy. I got a guy that missed weight. I got a guy that's probably a little stronger than me right now. But he wouldn't back down because he wanted to win the championship. He wanted, to save the division, as you said. And like you said, now it just kind of throws so many question marks in the air in a division that's been iffy. To no fault of the fighters in it, a division that's been iffy to begin with of whether it was going to stay around, because that's why these cards get thrown in the middle of nowhere, right? I mean, no offense to Norfolk, Virginia, but that's why these fights get put in smaller venues. That's why Demetrius Johnson is out of the UFC. They weren't selling these fights as big, massive fight. Maybe people don't want to see the little guys fight. I don't know. It's not, it's a competitive fight. It's a good fight. I watch it again, but that's what was happening. They couldn't draw with these featherweights. And it's just, it's a mess, man. It really is. It's a shame because you know how much goes into it. And then you see a result like this, and it just reminds you that it's not supposed to be this way. Like you said, you hate to say the wrong guy won, but, it
for the
feels
division, there's no other way to say it. For not the better fighter, for the division, for sure. And that's unfortunate.
Well, with that said, a longer than normal show. We appreciate you guys checking this out, and we will be back very shortly with more commentary.